All right, we welcome you in. Happy Wednesday evening. Happy Thanksgiving Eve as we get ready to talk about clean old fashioned hate. My name is Bryce Koon. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe on all those platforms, and we appreciate you. And most importantly, I hope that you have a fantastic Thanksgiving. As we gear up for rivalry weekend, we talked about it on last night's show live, and we're going to dive more into the game here. Georgia Tech, clean old fashioned hate. Yes, maybe it lost a little bit of its luster because of the result in terms of what could have been accomplished, but there's still a lot ahead for this Georgia Tech team. I think there's also still we need to keep in mind this is still a very good season that this group has had. Yes, you get into the weeds, you get into some of the disappointing things that you've seen, but overall, this is a really, really good season. A chance to finish 10-2 in the year, a chance to win a state title, and a chance to have a nice bowl game and have a catapult launching pad type of season in Brent Key's third full year at the helm. Like, subscribe, let's talk about it. And before we get into it, our presenting sponsor, as always, on these Georgia Tech Swarm Talk shows is our friends over at Section 103. I'm rocking that polo right down there below, the little, we'll call it the state polo. It's gold. It's the correct gold. They've got great gear. And running the special, if you're listening to this, hopefully you are, you're going to be listening or watching this before the Tech-Georgia game. You want to take advantage of their Black Friday deal. It's 20% off everything in the store. Once you do that, if it goes past that, if you miss out for some reason into the weekend looking for that holiday gift, head over to section103.com, use code TCB10, tell them Bryce sent you, and you can get 10% off on your first order today. It's a great brand. We love them. They do a great job. You see right here, that's going to get clipped, but that's okay. All right, let's talk about this. We're going to get into the title of this video is Georgia Tech upsets Georgia if. Let's lay down some ground rules. This game is obviously in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. A lot of hoopla about that. I come to the defense of Georgia Tech a little bit in this sense. It looks bad now, but knowing what you were undergoing and what you had to do going into the revenue sharing era at Georgia Tech, I don't necessarily feel terrible about this anymore. It does suck. This game should be in Bobby Dodd. I understand that. The decision was made. The previous AD made it. I don't think it was the wrong decision. It is what it is. This game, I think I can just go ahead and tell you, Will was out there as the Crowder booth was out there and had a media presence last Saturday against Pitt. Will was there at the game. And we talked about this on Monday's Rewind show, and then we all talked about it last night on the live show previewing this game. The vibes are down for Georgia Tech fans. And look, you had one of the biggest games, if not the biggest game that you've had in a very long time at Bobby Dodd on last Saturday. The crowd was rocking. The vibes were immaculate. It's everything you would want for a play-in game to potentially win the ACC title and to potentially go to a playoff. You had everything there for you. 60 minutes later, you are shocked. Your season, your home slate has come to an end. You had seniors walk off the field for the last time. It hits you like a ton of bricks. And so you feel for the kids. You feel for the coaches and everyone who has poured the blood, sweat, and tears into this program to make a really special season happen. That's what hurts. But you have to turn the page because this is, I've said this many times. I've said this since I've started doing this show and covering Georgia Tech. This is one of the great rivalries, one of the great games that needed to get better. And obviously we are entering into a game this weekend where it's Georgia Tech is the best it's been in a very long time, and you've got a Georgia team that is looking really good, and they're peaking at the right time. So it's two really good football teams. They're going to match up there in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So Georgia Tech wins this game if. I've got 3 points, and then I'm going to let you get to your Thanksgiving duties here. One, let's talk about the emotional hype. How much can you really buy into this? We talked about this last night. There's a lot of this concept, I guess I should say, that, okay, it's a rivalry game, so throw out the stats. And I said last night, to me, the Auburn-Alabama game is that every single year. Georgia Tech has been that the past 3 years where you could throw out the stats. I mean, we all remember, the game where it was Zach Gibson and Tyson Pumachan a couple of years ago in Athens. You look up at halftime and you've got a ball game. Probably on paper had no business being in that football game, but you were to fight in battle. This Georgia Tech team is much more talented than those renditions. So how far can the emotional hype carry you? Now, look, if you pay attention to social media, both fan bases going back and forth. It's the fun stuff that happens in a rivalry. It's all about that. But if you're in that locker room, if you're on that coaching staff, and Brent Key said it today, obviously, that he thinks about this game last year a lot, how much can you let that be the driving force of what happens? I'll push back right here with this. I don't think that you can sit there and make it your main focus. You can say that for I hesitate to use the word propaganda, but you can say it for, pumping up the fan base. You can say it is propaganda. You can utilize it for that. It gets the juices flowing. It's what season ticket donors want to hear. It's what the fan base wants to hear. That can't be your realistic mindset in this football game. You can't just go out there and say, hey, we've been thinking about this all year, and that's the driving force. When you start to play too emotional, one, the adrenaline's eventually going to wear off, and two, playing emotional plays high risk, high reward. I would rather see this team play their version of ball and try to improve on the areas that are deficient. We all know what that is. We'll talk about it in a second. So, in terms of the emotional hype of this game, yes, feed into it, buy into it. The fans should do it. The players should do it. But once you kick the ball off in Mercedes-Benz, there's not a fan of the stands that's going to make a difference. There's nobody, there's no podcaster, there's no media member that's going to be able to stoke the fire. It's, the 85 guys that you've got, the 85 guys that I've got, going to war, going to battle for 60 minutes. No holds bar. What can you do for me? That to me is where you have to put the emotional hype aside. Yes, you want to play with aggression, controlled aggression. Yes, you want to play with some level of emotion. It can't be the driving force if Georgia Tech's going to win this football game, because eventually that's going to wear off. And I'll add to it, you're playing a team that has dealt with an emotional roller coaster a lot this year in Georgia. I've said this multiple times on the college football shows. It's one of the best, if not the best, second half adjustment teams in the country. They know how to take punches, withstand it, not fall down to the mat. Maybe they stumble, but then get back up and lead a late charge. They are one of, right now, the elite teams in college football. You have to be able to do battle with them for 60 minutes. If mentally you're not clear, if mentally you're driven by the revenge factor, that's something that worries me, because that's not a clear mind in terms of being able to utilize something for 60 minutes and be able to sit on that and say, okay, we got it out of the way early on. Maybe we get the juices flowing. Let's go play football. That's the mentality I want to see from this group. So that's the emotional hype piece of this. The second part of this is a charge to the defense. Look, offensively, Georgia's talented on defense. They're not world beaters. I think there's things, and especially with Buster Faulkner, he's going to get in his bag this game. I feel like Georgia Tech's going to be able to do some things offensively against Georgia's defense. This really comes down to the fact of, we know who this Georgia Tech defense is. They're not very good. They have not been very good this season. They have showed in spurts, but the lack of consistency week in, week out, quarter to quarter, has put them in a situation to where now you got to win this game, and then you got to pray for a lot of help on Saturday. So all things considered, there needs to be a charge to defense. And Brent Key gave a little bit of that in the postgame and even this week talking to the media. But you really kind of have to sit there and tell yourself and think to yourself, okay, what does this look like? What can actually change, right? I'll just tell you this. You have to disrupt Gunnar Stockton. Like, that might just go as like, oh, it's obvious. You have to. You have to get in his face. You've got to, create some pressure, generate some pressure, and you've got to get home a couple of times. We talked about it. They did get 6 sacks last week. They just couldn't make plays in the back end. Can you find a way to disrupt his timing, get off of some of these blocks, win some one-on-one battles up front, do some stuff that you haven't done a lot of this year? Can that flip? And that's why I say it's a charge of the defense, because this is on you. Like, offensively, you're going to be able to move the football. It would shock me to see Haynes King have, what a lot of people referred to in the media now as his worst game in a Georgia Tech uniform. It would shock me to see him do that back-to-back, if that's what you believe. So I just kind of sit here and I tell myself, like, offensively, I think you're going to be fine. You're going to have a chance to make some plays. This defense has to step up to the table and make some plays to be able to utilize what they're trying to do and execute at a high level. Now, what does that look like? I already mentioned you've got to get home. The back end of this defense is banged up, and the linebacker play has to be better. Going back into that emotional setting, can you play with a clear head? Can you do that? Because when you let the emotions boil over, sometimes you can play out of control. That's something I've got to say of this defense, and they've got to be under control, disciplined, assignment sound, gap sound. They have to know what they're doing, and they've got to be in the place to make the play. And then once they get there, they've got to go make the play. So for Georgia Tech in this one, if they're going to have a chance to win this game, this defense has to answer the bell. They've got to get off the mat, because you're going to get punched by this Georgia offense. They're going to try to physically impose themselves on you. Can you meet them, and can you push back enough to give them some resistance to where you're not a wet paper bag the whole time? That, to me, is essentially where you got to go with it. So that's the second point. The third and final point. I think this is the game where you've got to create some chaos. I think this is the game for Georgia Tech where, you know, early on in the Brent Key tenure, maybe they didn't have the personnel, or maybe they didn't. Whatever the case was, you had to drag a team down into the trenches and just play dirty and play, a messy game. Georgia Tech's going to have to do that in this one. You're going to have to create some chaos, and that's the topic I've got listed here for the people listening and on our podcast feeds. You have to find a way to pull them down, play physical, play a nasty brand of football, physically imposing, and drag them into a low-scoring affair. Because, like I mentioned earlier, I think your offense can capitalize. But as a defense, can you create chaos? Can you get to Gunnar Stockton? Can you get him off of his rhythm? Because I'm going to tell you one thing, and this goes with every single quarterback, but you're starting to see it more with what Mike Bobo has done in Athens, and he's done a really good job this year. Contrary to what Georgia fans might tell you, when they get him out moving, he's in rhythm and he's in stride. Now, I don't think the receivers are elite. Noah Thomas has come along nicely. Zachariah Branch has elite traits or trait. But, you've got to be able, and Lawson Lucky, and they've got a lot of options. Dylan Bell, they have a solid core around Gunnar Stockton, especially the running back position. But can you turn this into, okay, we're going to go create chaos. We're going to create turnovers. You got to win the turnover battle. And we're going to he's going to have to make decisions very quickly. And if he does and he beats us off of that, you tip your cap and you keep moving on. I think that means playing aggressively. I think it means, doing some things that you haven't done yet. We talk a lot about, applying pressure. I think you've got to get, some stunts going in the middle. I think you've got to utilize your linebackers to their strengths. It's not a secret. Your linebackers are not great coverage backers. Can you get some guys in there on second and third down who can go get after the quarterback? This really just comes down to creating chaos. If this is a game where it goes pretty vanilla, I think Georgia wins this one and might cover the spread. The spread's 13 points, 13 and a half points, I think, from our friends over at FanDuel as of time recording this. But if you just kind of go out there and play a vanilla game, I think they can beat you straight up. I do think that's possible. But you factor in the rivalry game, which does play a role, the emotions in this, which can play a certain level of a role. You got to create some chaos. You have to create some negative plays. You've got to get them working behind the chains. You got to put pressure on them defensively. In terms of, I talk a lot about the defense here, but I think offensively for Georgia Tech, like you cannot just play patty cake from the, behind the line of scrimmage to the 7-yard marker. I mean, you can't do that against Georgia. You're going to have to spread some things out. They're way too athletic for you just to kind of play this. I call it a patty cake game, which it works against inferior opponents. This is not a defense that has a top 100 total unit. They're very good at what they do. They can rally to the football. They're very good at open field tackling. They do not allow a lot of yards after contact. When you play them, you have to spread them out. And so this is, as much as we want to talk about the defense and what they need to do and what needs to happen, you got to create chaos. I think offensively, you've got to get, creative here as well. How can we find the matchups? How can we utilize this? I think it could be a big game for a guy like Isaiah Canyon. Malik Rutherford needs to, obviously, you want him to be a part of it too, and a lot of these other receivers, but Isaiah Canyon has emerged as the physical outside receiver that you needed him to be. He has been that this year for you. He's come on, the back half of the season fairly nicely, and you got to create some chaos. You have to put a little bit of strain on this Georgia team, because if you go out there and play into their hands, they're going to beat you by double digits. I mean, and Brent Key has said this, Kirby Smart has said this, and the fans won't say it, but that's fine. But it's a rivalry, but you do respect what the other, program has built. And I know that's on both sides of the aisle in terms of talking to people on both, in both, facilities. Like Georgia respects that. Georgia staff respects what Brent Key's building. Brent Key and that Georgia Tech staff respect what has been built in Athens. And so they know if you play into that, it doesn't bode well for you. You got to get creative. Now, I'm not saying it's some type of desperation. You got to run 4 trick plays on our drive like LSU did a couple weeks ago against Arkansas, but you have to be creative. This is where Buster Faulkner really has to dig deep. You've got to identify those matchups this week. Where can we exploit? What can we do? And you go from there. So Clean Old Fashioned Hate, going to be a fun one. Going to be a lot of fun. Good atmosphere I'm expecting in Mercedes-Benz. We will be there. Come hang out with us. Blue Lot Tailgate. Starting around 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. We're going to be hanging out pre-game, and Will and I will be inside the game up in the press box covering it, and then we'll have a post-game show wrapping things up as well. Can Georgia Tech do it? They win, I think, if they do those three things: the emotional hype, the charge to the defense, and creating chaos on both sides of the football. Before we get out of here, MacArthur Woodworks. I've told you a lot about them. I got the hat right back here for you. They do a fantastic job. Listen, December 15th is the last day to get some of your custom orders in before Christmas. If you want it done, make sure you head over to MacArthurWoodworks.com. Use TCB10. That's TCB10 to get 10% off your order today. It's a special gift. It means a lot. You want to utilize it. Just head to the website. Tell me what you think. Let them know Bryce sent you. We appreciate you tuning in. Thanks so much. Clean Old Fashioned Hate on tap. We'll have a reaction show right after the finale of that game. So can't wait for it. It'll be a lot of fun. And we will catch you next time here on Swarm Talk, brought to you by the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.